Okay. So have you ever, like, imagined yourself exploring a cave? I mean, it's dark, right?
Uh-huh.
And you rely on just a headlamp to see where you're going. But you keep pushing forward deeper and deeper into this like hidden world.
It's thrilling, right? That sense of adventure, the unknown, it's exhilarating.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But what happens when that thrill turns into terror? Like, what if you realize you've gone too far?
It's a thought that sends shivers down your spine, doesn't it?
Totally. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. The true story of Nutty Putty Cave in Utah. Place that, like, drew thousands of people with its challenging passages, but ultimately became a tomb.
It's a tragic story, one that highlights the allure and the dangers of cave exploration.
Right. And at the heart of it is this heartbreaking case of John Edward Jones, a young father whose Thanksgiving trip turned into this desperate fight for survival.
It's a story that has captivated and horrified people for years. And today we're going to delve into it, explore not just this tragic event, but also earlier rescues, the science behind cave formation, and the difficult ethical questions about access and safety.
Exactly. So if you find yourself like captivated by tales of human resilience, and the mysteries of the natural world, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and join us as we go deep.
We're going to take you on a journey into the depths of Nutty Putty Cave, exploring its history, its geology, and the events that led to its tragic closure.
Let's start with the cave itself. What made it such a draw for adventurers?
Nutty Putty was, well, it was known as a caver's cave, a true test of skill and endurance. Think about navigating passages so narrow you have to contort your body, squeeze through spaces barely wider than your shoulders.
I mean, that sounds intense. Was it like for experienced cavers only, or?
It was definitely a challenge, yeah. Not for the casual explorer. It was a thrill, and for many it was like a bucket list destination.
It almost sounds more like an obstacle course than a walk in the park.
You're not wrong, and that's what drew people to it. Nutty Putty offered a unique challenge, a sense of accomplishment for those who conquered its depths,
Sorry.
right? But that sense of adventure came with a price. As we'll see, Nutty Putty had a dark side, one that many chose to ignore.
Before we get into that, I'm curious about the science behind it all. Like, how does a cave like Nutty Putty even form? It's like, these hidden worlds right beneath our feet.
It's a fascinating process, it really is. A testament to the Earth's power. Nutty Putty is what's called a solution cave.
Okay, solution cave.
Yeah. Over millions of years, slightly acidic water seeps through cracks in the limestone. It slowly dissolves the rock and carves out these intricate tunnels and chambers.
So it's like nature's own sculpting project, just
Okay.
happening on a time scale we can barely even fathom.
Exactly. And what makes Nutty Putty even more unique is it formed from the bottom up. So imagine boiling water, right? Forced upwards from deep within the earth,
Okay, yeah.
gradually eating away at the limestone, creating this labyrinth of passages.
Whoa. So boiling water shaping a cave. That's
Uh,
pretty wild. It's almost mystical.
It is. And it gives you a sense of the immense forces at play beneath the surface, but that same power that creates these wonders can also make them incredibly dangerous.
Right. And Nutty Putty had, its share of close calls, even before John Jones's accident. Weren't there stories of people getting stuck, needing, hours to be rescued, almost like there were warning signs, whispers of danger that people just ignored?
You're absolutely right. There were several incidents, especially in the years leading up to 2009, that really should have raised red flags. In 1999, for example, two teenagers, Chris Merrow and Chris Hale, became trapped in a particularly narrow section called the birth canal.
The birth canal. Wow. I mean, just the name.
Right. It's not a place for the faint of heart. Imagine a passage so tight you have to lie flat on your stomach, inching forward with your chest pressed against the rock.
I'm already feeling claustrophobic just thinking about it.
It took rescuers almost 12 hours to get those boys out. 12 hours.
I can't even imagine the fear, the panic they must have felt.
It was a harrowing experience and a stark reminder of how quickly things can go wrong in a cave like Nutty Putty. And then, in 2004, another teenager, Brock Clark, he got stuck in the same area. This time, upside down, his leg pinned behind him.
Oh my gosh. That's terrifying.
It was. He was trapped for hours, blood rushing to his head, agonizing pain. Rescuers had to use specialized equipment and techniques to finally free him. It was a miracle he survived.
It's amazing to think that even after these incidents, people still kept going to Nutty Putty. It's like they thought, it can't happen to me.
It's a testament to the human desire for adventure, I guess, the thrill of pushing boundaries, right?
Right.
But it also speaks to a certain level of denial. an unwillingness to acknowledge the inherent risks involved.
These close calls, they were like whispers, warnings of the dangers that lurked within Nutty Putty. And those whispers, they just grew louder with each incident, culminating in the tragedy of John Jones.
Exactly, you're right. And there's another incident, not in Nutty Putty itself, but nearby, that adds another layer to this conversation about risk and responsibility. It happened in 2005 in a place called the Cave of Death.
Cave of Death. That sounds ominous.
It is. Sadly, a group of 4 friends, including Jennifer Gale Race, lost their lives in that abandoned mine shaft. They mistook it for a natural cave. It highlights another danger, the allure of the unknown, and the importance of proper identification and knowledge before venturing into these subterranean worlds.
It's a sobering reminder that exploration, even in these amazing environments, comes with a responsibility,
Yeah.
to understand the risks and take precautions.
Absolutely. The Cave of Death tragedy, along with those earlier incidents in Nutty Putty, they were clear warning signs, a tapestry of events that foreshadowed the tragedy that was to come.
And with that, we come to John Jones, a young father, an experienced caver, drawn back to his passion after years away. What led him to Nutty Putty that fateful Thanksgiving week?
Well, John had, grown up exploring the caves of Utah with his family. It was in his blood, this love for the underground world.
Mm-hmm.
But he'd been away, pursuing medical school in Virginia. His caving adventures were on hold. This trip back home was a chance to reconnect with family, with friends, and with his passion.
So it was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a Thanksgiving reunion, a chance to relive some of those childhood memories.
Exactly. He, his brother Josh, and a group of friends decided to explore Nutty Putty Cave. It seemed like the perfect way to celebrate, to reconnect with the thrill of adventure.
It's heartbreaking to think that what started as a celebration turned into, a tragedy that would forever change the lives of so many.
It is, and it underscores the importance of understanding the risks, respecting nature's power, and being prepared for the unexpected, even in seemingly familiar environments.
So they set off into Nutty Putty, eager to explore. Can you walk us through those initial moments, the decisions that led to John becoming trapped?
They spent some time in the larger, more accessible areas of the cave, but John, his brother Josh, and a couple of others, they wanted a challenge. They decided to search for that infamous birth canal, relying on memory and a general sense of direction more than a detailed map.
So the allure of the unknown, that desire to push a little further, test their limits.
Exactly. And that's where things started to go wrong. They ended up in a remote, poorly mapped section of the cave known as Bob's Push. John spotted this narrow vertical fissure and, thinking it might lead to a larger passage, decided to investigate.
So he enters this fissure, and then what happens?
Well, picture this.
Yeah.
You're squeezing headfirst into a space barely 18 inches wide, like a human corkscrew trying to burrow into solid rock.
Yeah.
John, at 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, he was pushing his limits, relying on momentum and strength to force his way through.
It already sounds incredibly claustrophobic.
It was. Rescuers believe he sucked in his chest to squeeze past a ledge, sliding his torso into an even tighter section, a mere 10 inches wide. And then, when he tried to expand his chest again, he was stuck. Wedged upside down, chest constricted. You can't breathe deeply, and the only way out is if someone else gets you out.
That's a nightmare scenario right there. And this was Thanksgiving, right? His brother Josh was there with him.
You can just imagine what they both must have been going through. That initial shock, right? Then the struggle to get free. And then that moment when they realize how serious it is. Josh tried to pull John out, but the fissure was just too narrow. There was no way.
So Josh went to get help, left a friend with John. What happened when the rescue teams arrived?
Well, the first team got there around midnight. Imagine, it's Thanksgiving. Freezing cold, you're racing against the clock to save a man trapped deep inside this cave. A logistical nightmare, right?
We've talked about those passages, how
Yeah.
narrow they were. Just getting equipment down there, let alone people, must have been incredibly difficult.
It was slow, painstaking, and dangerous. One of the first responders, Susie Moa, she was the smallest of the team. She volunteered to go down into the fissure, assess John's condition, and try to comfort him.
That must have taken incredible courage, crawling into that space, knowing she could get trapped too.
Absolutely. But she was able to reach him, talk to him, offer some words of hope, assure him they'd get him out, even though the situation was dire.
So back at the surface, you had a trauma doctor, Doug Murdoch, arrive to advise the team. What was his assessment of John's condition?
Well, Dr. Murdoch, he didn't paint a very optimistic picture. He said that being upside down for so long, fluids were building up in his lungs, his brain, circulation was compromised, toxins were building up. His estimate was that John had maybe 8–10 hours before things became life-threatening.
So the clock was ticking. What were the options? What could they do?
They got to work right away, tried all sorts of things, a pulley system. But the angles, the narrowness of the fissure, everything was against them. Every movement risked hurting John even more.
It must have been so frustrating, knowing time was running out and hitting dead end after dead end. Did they consider anything more drastic?
They did. They even talked about using explosives to widen the opening, but it was just too risky. They tried lubricating the passage with vegetable oil, hoping to make it easier to pull him free, but nothing was working.
So despite their efforts, they were running out of options. Did they make any progress at all?
There was this one moment, right? They managed to move John about 12 feet. It felt like a breakthrough, like maybe, just maybe, they could pull it off, but then disaster struck.
What happened?
One of the anchors holding the pulley system, it failed. The rope snapped. A metal carabiner flew back toward the entrance and hit one of the rescuers, Ryan Schertz, right in the face.
Oh, no.
He ended up with a broken jaw, nearly lost his tongue.
That's awful.
Just a freak accident. A huge blow to the rescue efforts. And to make matters worse, John slid back down into an even tighter spot than before.
So after all that effort, all that hope, John was back where he started. And now one of the rescuers was injured too. What happened to Ryan?
Well, he needed medical attention, obviously. But even with his injuries, he insisted on staying with John until his own father, Dave Schertz, could replace him. Talk about dedication.
It's incredible the things people do in these situations.
Yeah.
John facing the reality of being trapped, the rescuers battling exhaustion, and John's family dog waiting.
And for John, who was so close to being free, it must have been crushing. One of the rescuers said John looked at Dave and said, "I'm gonna die in here."
Those words, knowing there was nothing they could do.
Just a stark reminder, right, of the power of nature and the limits of what we can do, even with all the best intentions.
It's heavy stuff. I think we need a moment here. For our listeners, put yourselves in the rescuer's shoes. How do you keep going in a situation like that? We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into the Nutty Putty Cave tragedy. It's tough to think about, you know? Everyone working so hard, but knowing that it might not be enough.
Yeah, the rescuers kept at it. They tried to fix the pulley system, but the angles, the space, it was just impossible. Every time they moved John, it caused him terrible pain.
It must have been agonizing for everyone, knowing they were running out of options.
It was. And for John, trapped like that, facing death, I can't imagine what was going through his mind.
Did he get to say goodbye to his family?
They tried, lowered a radio down to him so he could talk to his wife, Emily. But by the time they got it to him, John had lost consciousness.
So he never got to say goodbye.
No. John Edward Jones passed away just before midnight on November 25th, 2009, Thanksgiving Day. Still trapped in that cave.
It's a story that, well, it stays with you. The adventure turning into a desperate fight, the heroism of the rescuers, and then such a sad ending. What happened after? With the cave, I mean.
They decided to seal Nutty Putty Cave permanently.
I imagine that wasn't an easy decision.
No, but it was the only way to guarantee no one else would meet the same fate. John's family, understandably heartbroken, they supported the decision.
Knowing he was, well, still inside. That must have been incredibly difficult.
It was. But they found some solace in the idea that his final resting place was a place he loved, a place that represented his adventurous spirit.
A bittersweet ending to a tragic story.
It is. It reminds us that even when we're pursuing our passions, we have to remember nature's power and respect our limits.
So as we come to the end of our deep dive into the Nutty Putty Cave tragedy, what do you think are the most important things for our listeners to take away from this story?
I think it's a reminder that exploration, whether it's literal, like in a cave or in any other part of life, it comes with risk. We have to be prepared. And never underestimate the power of the natural world.
And, as you said, respect its limits.
Exactly.
And maybe, even more importantly, it reminds us to appreciate the time we have with loved ones. Never take those moments for granted. Because life, it can be like an uncharted cave, you know? Unpredictable. Sometimes the path we choose leads us to a place we never expected.
It's true. John's story is a mix of adventure, tragedy, and a powerful reminder to live life to the fullest. But to do it with respect for the delicate balance between what we want and the forces that shape our world.
Will said. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Nutty Putty Caves. We hope John's story will inspire you to approach your own explorations, in every sense of the word, with a sense of wonder, but also with caution, and a deep appreciation for life itself.